Okay, so let's go over the difference between primary tubing, secondary tubing, and wide siding and infusion. Let's do this real quick. For second of all, it's my birthday. What you gonna do for my birthday? What you gonna do for my birthday? But my students, what they did for my birthday is they had a whole party for me with roses. I got 24 roses. I got a cake with my name on it. They made all of this food for me. I'm just beyond blessed. They bought me gifts. They bought me cards. They all signed it. Beyond blessed. So grateful, and it just makes me remember why I'm doing this, because I really put my heart and soul into teaching, and I love it, and I'm just so grateful that they can feel. This is my pump, okay, and let's just say the doctor says that he wants me to give normal saline at 100, okay. I have my saline bag. This is the primary tubing, okay. This is how it looks. The tubing has like this little container and has a spike at the top, okay. So you would spike this like this. We'll flip it over, and then whatever's in here, you squeeze this, it comes down. This goes into the chamber. All tubing has this little something like this in the tubing. This basically checks for bubbles. So if there's a bubble, it'll basically tell you, and the pump will start beeping so that the patient doesn't get a whole bolus of air, okay? So if you go like this, it's now open and it's gonna flow everywhere. Okay, and this is our stopper. I don't know the scientific name for this, but you slide this up and that's open. You slide it down, it's locked. This is primary tubing, okay? And this is the part that's connected to the patient, okay? This is connected to the patient's IV, all right? So this is primary, okay? This is a primary infusion. Now, let's go over secondary and why we would use it. This is secondary tubing, and you see the tubing is very short. It will also come in a pack with this, okay? The point of secondary tubing is that I don't have to change out the tubing that is going to the patient over and over. Let me explain. Let's just say I needed to give the patient 5 different antibiotics during my shift. Every single time that I have to stop, change out the tubing, flush the patient, and hang a new antibiotic, I'm exposing the patient to more infection, potential infection, because every single time I have the patient, they have the IV right here, I'm scrubbing a hub, flushing, changing out, boom. Scrubbing a hub, flushing, changing out, boom. Whereas when I have secondary tubing, the trick here is that I can have one line. Here's my primary, right? My primary tubing is going to the patient, okay? And then, here, I'm gonna get a little arm. For all intents and purposes, let's just say this is our patient, okay? And our patient, let's just say here's his IV line. So I've scrubbed the hub, I've flushed him, and now I attach his IV line, right? So he's attached, okay? So this is my primary tubing. My primary infusion is going to the patient, okay? But now I have, primary infusion may only be going at 25 ml per hour. A little rinse, a little sip of water an hour, you know what I mean? Nothing crazy. That's going to the patient at 25 ml per hour, okay? So now what I do is, I have my secondary, okay? So the doctor says, I want this patient to get 1 gram of Rocephin, an antibiotic. I say, okay, no problem, right? Rocephin is gonna hang for an hour. So what I do is, I take my primary tubing, I drop it down with this thingamajigger. I've never named it because I've never said it out loud what it is, okay? So this goes like this. Now my primary infusion is lower. So then I'll have my secondary infusion going higher, right? My secondary will connect to my primary right here, okay? So now I have my primary, which is hanging lower than my secondary, okay? So whatever's in the secondary will infuse before what's in the primary because it's higher and because of gravity. We set up how fast we want the primary and secondary on the IV pump. But let's just say you bust this open for whatever reason, this is going to infuse first as long as everything is unclamped because it's higher. Okay, so reasons why I would not do this. Let's just say I have a patient who is NPO and they're having nothing to eat or drink, and I'm giving them D5.5 normal because they're not eating or drinking. That patient is not a patient that I would want to do this with. Why? Because they're getting D5 normal to substitute because they're not eating or drinking. So that D5 normal may be going at 100 ml per hour. When I do secondary tubing, only the secondary is infusing for that amount of time. So let's just say I'm giving something that goes short, like an infusion that goes over 30 minutes. If that's the case, sure, you'll be all right. Most likely, the patient is going to be fine if they're not getting their D5 normal for a half an hour. But if it's a diabetic patient, or just in general, if someone is not eating or drinking, or let's just say they're just getting fluids, period, it could be normal saline for another reason other than just replacement therapy. Either way, you don't want to stop somebody's replacement fluids if the fluids are really important for a long infusion. For instance, Zosyn usually runs as an extended infusion over 4 hours. You would not want to piggyback Zosyn. Oh, secondary can also be called piggyback. You do not want to use Zosyn as a secondary infusion, and then that patient is missing out on their normal saline or D5.5 for 4 hours. Do you understand that? It's only meant for short infusions or separate, okay? You can also do this and have your primary infusion still running, okay? You do not want to hang secondary tubing if the person needs their fluids, okay? You would only do this if you're able to put the fluids at 25, or if it's a short infusion where the patient's gonna be okay for 30 minutes while you run something real quick, okay? So usually the fluids are usually at 20 to 25. It will be a PRN order in the system for you to hang fluids for a secondary infusion, okay? So let's just say I do have a patient who's NPL and they're getting D5 normal at 100. The really good thing about the secondary infusion is that, let's just say I have a patient who gets 5 antibiotics overnight and they're sleeping and they haven't slept all night. Or let's just say you got Mr. Charles who been tripping all night. He been kicking, screaming, trying to get out of bed. He been having delusions and hallucinations. Mr. Charles been tripping and he just fell asleep, and you got another antibiotic to do. He already got a primary line. You have the primary line going to him. You're just changing out this bag, okay? So let's just say the doctor says, okay, as soon as the ceftriaxone is done, can you also give a bag of mag? No problem, Stank. I got you. You ain't got to wake Mr. Charles up. He already has his primary infusion through his IV. All you do is, I took off my Rocephin. Now I have my mag. I put my mag here, I attach my mag here, I program the pump to infuse magnesium now, secondary. That's the pluses of doing secondary. It's easier for the patient too, because it's not so much alarm fatigue, because there's not alarms. This pump, baby, this right here is gonna keep you up. It's loud, okay? And it beeps every time that their IV gets kinked, every time there's a bubble, every time that the fluid is finished. So it really helps the patient also to be able to sleep and just relax in the hospital, to not hear beeping next to their head every 5 minutes, okay? So let's just say we do have our NPO patient who has D5 normal at 100, right? And they're not drinking or eating, so they need their D5 normal at 100, right? So I can't do secondary, because then they're not gonna get their D5 normal while the secondary is infusing, okay? No, I can't do that, okay? This patient needs D5 normal right now, okay? Cool. So the doctor says, hey, he has the D5 normal. Can you also give Rocephin? No problem, right? I have looked in the computer, I checked on Lexicon, and I figured out that the two medications are compatible. D5 normal and Rocephin are compatible. I do not know if they're compatible right now. I'm just using it for an example. If you can't find the Lexicon, you call the pharmacy. Hey, just wanted to make sure, are these two medications compatible? Now I say, here's my Rocephin. Here's my D5 normal, okay? Now, it depends on what kind of pump you use, okay? This is the old pumps I used to use at Hahnemann. With these pumps, you have this one. This is a one IV channel. With this one, you can just attach another IV panel like that, okay? And now you have two different things that can infuse on their own rate, their own pump, right? But it depends on what type of facility you work at. Everybody's pumps are different. The pumps I use at my hospital now are totally different. But either way, the point is that you need an individual channel for each medication if you're doing something that's not secondary, okay? All right, so now I have Rocephin here, saline here. This is where we're gonna talk about Y-siding, okay? Because I have D5 normal going at 100. Now I have Rocephin that's gonna go at 50, okay? These two things are compatible, so they can go into the same IV at the same time. So this one is connected to the patient's arm. Let's just say this is the patient's arm. Then I connect this other one, I Y-side it to here, okay? So now I have this one going into this one, okay? So now you can see the pump. You see it's two different medications, right? But it's all going into one line, okay? into the hand, like that, okay? That's all that it is. These two medications have to be compatible because they're going into the vein at the same time. They're connecting. They're gonna go at their own individual rates though. This one may go at 100, this one may go at 50. They can go at their own individual rates because they have their own channel. They have to be compatible because at this point, they're mixing and going into the vein together. So this is called Y-siting. Just in case somebody's gonna ask this, if the medications are not compatible, you need to have 2 different IV sites through 2 different IVs. If you only have one IV and the patient is a hard stick and or the patient doesn't want to get stuck and or it may not be necessary. Let's just say they're getting IV Tylenol. IV Tylenol runs in over 15 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and stop that D5 for 15 minutes and give my Tylenol. But if it's something like Zosyn or if it's something that's long and it messes up the whole schedule of the whole day if you don't have 2 IVs, then you can try your best to advocate for the patient to get another IV if it's not too much for that patient to handle and it makes sense. Or even if you have 2 different antibiotics that are long, you can ask the pharmacy to change out the schedule to make it so that you don't need 2 IVs. But if they do have to run simultaneously, then you need 2 different IVs. Anyway, I hope this helps. Be a pal. If you like this video, drop a comment, send to a nurse. Anyway, it's Aries season. What you gonna do for my birthday? What you gonna do for my birthday? What you gonna do for your birthday? It's my birthday. Love you. Bye.